Imagine standing on the edge of something you've prayed for, something you've longed for, but feeling an unexpected stirring in your spirit, an awareness that before you can receive what God has promised, there's something deeper at work in your heart. You may find yourself asking, why do I feel restless, challenged, or even unsettled right now? The answer is simple yet profound. When God is about to give you something big, He often prepares you in ways that might seem difficult or confusing, but are necessary for what lies ahead. When God is about to give you something big, one of the first signs you'll notice is the test of your faith and patience. This period of waiting and refinement is not just a random delay, it is purposeful, and it is in these moments that God molds and prepares you for the grand blessings He has in store. We find ourselves at a crossroads, not understanding why God is asking us to wait, or why our prayers seem unanswered. But in the midst of this waiting, God is working in us in ways that we may not even be able to comprehend until we look back and see the full picture. Faith is not simply believing in God when things are going well. It's easy to trust when everything feels secure and predictable. The true depth of faith comes when circumstances are uncertain, when we cannot see the immediate outcome, and yet we continue to trust that God knows what He is doing. Faith in these moments becomes an active choice to believe in His goodness and His timing. It's choosing to trust that He will fulfill His promises, even when the waiting period feels long and the path seems unclear. We are called to trust in Him with our whole heart, not relying on our own understanding, but acknowledging Him in all our ways. Proverbs 3:05. In the test of faith, patience becomes a companion. God's timing often differs greatly from our own, and the period of waiting can feel like an eternity. Patience is not just the ability to wait, it is the attitude with which we wait. The Apostle Paul reminds us in Romans 12:12 to be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. This verse speaks to a life that is anchored in hope, where the waiting does not feel like a burden, but an opportunity for growth. It speaks to a patient heart that, though experiencing affliction and hardship, continues to press forward with faith, trusting that the wait will not be in vain. The process of waiting and growing in patience is not easy. It challenges every part of our being, our desires, our sense of control, and our timeline. We may ask, why am I being asked to wait when others seem to be moving forward? Or why does it feel like my prayers are unheard? It is in these moments of questioning that God invites us to step deeper into trust. He calls us to surrender our timelines and our expectations to Him, knowing that His ways are higher than ours. Isaiah 55 verse 9. What God is preparing for you is not just a gift. It is something that requires maturity, character, and the ability to steward it well. In the waiting, you are being refined, your trust is being strengthened, and your ability to handle greater responsibility is being developed. This kind of trust and patience is also about believing in God's plan, even when we cannot see it. Consider the story of Abraham, who was promised by God that he would become the father of many nations. Yet, Abraham's faith was tested in ways that challenged his understanding. God told him to leave his home and go to a land he didn't know. He waited for years for the promised son, Isaac, and at times doubt and fear may have crept into his heart. But despite all the waiting, despite the seemingly impossible circumstances, Abraham chose to trust God's promise. His faith, tested over time, was credited to him as righteousness. Romans 4:03. It is in these moments of testing that God reveals not only his faithfulness, but also our capacity to trust him more fully. Our ability to remain patient and faithful during times of uncertainty and waiting deepens our relationship with God and strengthens our character for what lies ahead. God is preparing us for something far greater than we can imagine, and as we wait, he is shaping us into the person who can handle the blessings he is about to give. As God prepares to give us something big, we often find that the road ahead is not as smooth as we might expect. Instead of a direct, easy path, we are led through unexpected detours, challenges, and even setbacks. These moments are not meant to discourage us, but to teach us perseverance, humility, and trust. The journey toward receiving God's greatest blessings is rarely a straight line, and it is through these obstacles that our character is shaped and refined. There is a tendency, especially in modern times, to expect instant gratification. We want things to happen quickly, without struggle or delay. God's way of preparing us often involves taking us through periods of difficulty. These times can feel disheartening, and we may wonder why we are facing such opposition or hardship when we have been faithfully following God's will. But it is often in these moments that we grow the most. The detours and challenges are part of God's process of shaping us into the individuals he needs us to be in order to handle his blessings with grace and wisdom. Consider the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph was given a great dream by God, a promise of leadership and blessing. The path to this dream was anything but straightforward. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. If anyone had reason to doubt God's promises, it would have been Joseph. Through each setback, God was refining Joseph's character, preparing him for the position of authority he would one day hold. Every trial Joseph faced brought him closer to the fulfillment of God's plan for his life, and through each challenge he learned valuable lessons in humility, leadership, and trust in God's timing. Joseph's response to the trials he faced is a powerful example of how we are to trust in God's plan, even when the journey takes us down unexpected paths. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph tells his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph saw beyond the immediate pain and recognized that God had a purpose for every detour and every challenge. When faced with challenges, we may feel that God has abandoned us or that we are out of his will. It is important to remember that God never leaves us in the midst of our struggles. He is with us through every hardship, and often the detours and setbacks are exactly what we need to become stronger in our faith and better equipped to handle the blessings he has promised us. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans 5:3-4, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." This verse reminds us that through the trials we endure, we are being shaped into the people who can stand firm in hope, knowing that God is always working in us and for us. The key to navigating these challenges lies in maintaining faith during times of difficulty. It is in the struggle that we learn to rely not on our own strength, but on God's strength. We are reminded in Corinthians 12:9 that, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." When we find ourselves weak or overwhelmed by the challenges ahead, we can take comfort in knowing that it is in our weakness that God's power is most evident. Our struggles don't disqualify us from receiving God's blessings. Rather, they prepare us to receive them with a humble heart and a steadfast trust in His provision. These detours, challenges, and setbacks are not the end of the road. They are part of God's perfect plan to refine us and prepare us for the bigger things He has in store. Though we may not understand the reasons behind every difficulty, we can trust that God is using these moments to shape us into the people He needs us to be, so that when His promises are fulfilled, we will be ready to receive them and glorify Him in the process. As God prepares to give us something big, there is an important aspect of His process that we often overlook. He is not only blessing us, but also preparing us for greater responsibility. The blessings that God has in store for us are not simply rewards for good behavior or signs of favor. They are entrusted to us with the understanding that we will be stewards of what He gives. The bigger the blessing, the greater the responsibility that comes with it. Therefore, before God releases His greatest gifts, He takes time to mold and equip us, ensuring that we are ready to handle them with wisdom and grace. When we think of God's blessings, we may focus primarily on what those blessings are: a new job, a larger home, a ministry, a financial breakthrough, or a relationship. While these are indeed blessings, God's ultimate aim is to prepare us to manage them well. It is one thing to receive a blessing, but it is another thing entirely to steward that blessing in a way that honors God and serves others. The Lord doesn't simply want to bless us with abundance. He wants us to have the character and discipline needed to handle the abundance with integrity. This is why He sometimes leads us through periods of growth, testing, and even pruning before He gives us the blessings we desire. Consider the parable of the talents in Matthew 25:14, 30-30. In this parable, a master entrusts his servants with different amounts of money according to their abilities. The one who receives 5 talents invests and multiplies them, while the one who receives 1 talent hides it in the ground. When the master returns, he rewards the servants who wisely invested their talents, saying to them, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much." Matthew 25:21. The servant who did nothing with his talent is rebuked for his laziness and fear. This parable illustrates a key principle. The more we must prove ourselves faithful in the little things. God doesn't give us great blessings without first seeing how we handle the smaller ones. He is training us for greater things, and the way we handle what we have now will directly influence what He gives us in the future. Before God blesses us with something big, He may take us through a season of preparation, where we learn the importance of stewardship, sacrifice, and faithfulness. We are often tested in the areas of money, relationships, time, and resources. The way we manage these things shows whether we are truly ready for the greater blessings that are ahead. For example, God may entrust us with a small responsibility or a modest opportunity and observe how we handle it. If we are faithful with that small thing, He will know that we can be trusted with more. But if we are careless or self-centered, we may find ourselves waiting longer for the bigger blessings, because God knows that we must first be shaped in character to handle the responsibility. This process of preparation also involves spiritual growth. As we move through life, God uses every experience, every challenge, every joy, every trial to mature us in our faith. He teaches us to rely on Him, trust in His provision, and understand that we are not in control of the outcome. Through prayer, Scripture, and fellowship with others, He builds in us the wisdom and discernment necessary to lead others and to manage the resources He provides. James 1:05 tells us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." In this way, the preparation for bigger blessings is not just about gaining material wealth or success, but about gaining the wisdom to handle those blessings with the maturity and heart of Christ. It is often in these times of preparation that we face personal struggles, challenges, and moments of doubt. These moments are not signs that we are unworthy of God's blessings. Rather, they are opportunities for growth. God is refining us, teaching us to trust Him more deeply, and helping us develop the skills necessary to manage the big things He wants to give us. As we undergo this preparation, it is essential that we remain faithful, humble, and willing to learn, knowing that God's timing and His ways are perfect. Philippians 4:19 reminds us, "And my God will supply every need of yours according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus." God will supply everything we need to be ready for the responsibility that accompanies His blessings, and when the time is right, He will entrust us with what we are prepared to handle. When God is about to give you something big, one of the signs you will experience is a heightened sense of discernment and understanding. As you grow closer to God, you will begin to notice that He opens your eyes to see more clearly what He is doing in your life and in the world around you. These moments of clarity are not just about physical sight, but about spiritual insight, a deeper awareness of His presence and His plan. You may begin to sense His guidance more strongly, hear His voice more clearly, and recognize His work in ways you hadn't before. This discernment is a precious gift from God, one that equips you to walk in His will and prepare for the big things He is about to do. God doesn't leave us in the dark when He is preparing to bless us. He gives us the discernment to understand the times and seasons we are in. This spiritual awareness enables us to make wise decisions, avoid pitfalls, and navigate the challenges that come our way. The Apostle Paul writes in Philippians 1:9 and 10, "And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ." In this passage, Paul emphasizes that discernment comes through an increase in knowledge and insight, both of which are rooted in God's wisdom. As we grow in our relationship with Him, He gives us the ability to discern His will and to recognize the direction He wants us to take. Discernment often comes in moments of stillness, when we take the time to listen and wait upon God. In these moments, He reveals His plans for us in ways that are not always immediate or overwhelming, but are often subtle nudges in our hearts or quiet thoughts that align with His word. We are reminded in Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." This verse speaks to the importance of slowing down, taking time to rest in God's presence, and allowing Him to reveal the deeper truths that He has for us. In the busyness of life, it is easy to miss the signs that God is giving us, but when we make space for Him, He opens our eyes to see the path He has laid out before us. This discernment also involves a greater awareness of the spiritual forces at work around us. As God prepares to bless us with something significant, He often opens our eyes to the spiritual realities that are influencing our lives, both the good and the bad. We may begin to recognize patterns, relationships, or even spiritual attacks that had previously been hidden from us. This awareness helps us stand firm in faith, make wise choices, and avoid the snares of the enemy. It also deepens our reliance on God, as we recognize that we cannot navigate these spiritual realities on our own, but need His guidance every step of the way. In addition to increased spiritual awareness, discernment also involves a heightened sensitivity to the people and circumstances around us. God will often use others to speak into our lives and direct us toward the things He has for us. Through conversations, circumstances, and even challenges, He will guide us, but we need the discernment to recognize His voice in these moments. Hebrews 5:14 says, "But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil." As we mature in our faith, we become better at distinguishing between what is of God and what is not, what is aligned with His will and what is contrary to it. This maturity in discernment allows us to navigate the complexities of life and make decisions that honor Him. The closer we walk with God, the more He opens our spiritual eyes to see what He is doing in our lives. This discernment is a gift, one that God desires to give to all who seek it. It is a tool that prepares us for the big things He has in store, helping us to walk in His will and align our hearts with His purposes. As we grow in understanding, we become more attuned to His voice, more confident in His direction, and more ready to embrace the blessings that are. As God prepares to bless you with something big, one of the most significant signs you will notice is the presence of inner peace amidst external chaos. The world around us is often filled with uncertainty, noise, and confusion, but when God is about to move in your life in a profound way, He will give you a peace that transcends the circumstances you are facing. This peace is not something that can be manufactured by your own efforts or by controlling the situations around you. It is a peace that comes from God alone, rooted in His sovereignty and His faithful promises. It is a deep, unshakable sense of assurance that, no matter what happens around you, you are secure in His love and in His plan for your life. The peace that God gives is not simply a temporary feeling of calmness when everything is going well. It is a peace that remains even in the storm. Jesus promises this kind of peace in John 14:27, saying, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." The peace of Christ is different from the peace the world offers. Worldly peace is often fleeting and dependent on circumstances, but the peace that Jesus offers is constant, regardless of external conditions. When God is preparing something big for you, He will provide this peace, helping you to navigate the uncertainties and struggles of life with a calm trust in His control over all things. This peace serves as a signpost, confirming that you are walking in alignment with God's will. When the external world seems chaotic and the pressures of life mount, God's peace will act as an anchor for your soul. It allows you to rest in the assurance that He is in control, even when you cannot see the entire picture. Philippians 4:6-7 reminds us of this truth. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This peace is a guarding peace, a peace that protects your heart and mind from fear, anxiety, and doubt. When you feel overwhelmed or uncertain, God's peace guards you, allowing you to remain steadfast and focused on His promises. The presence of peace does not mean that you will never face challenges or difficulties. On the contrary, God's peace is often most evident in the midst of struggle. When everything around you seems to be falling apart, God's peace can still hold you together. It is in these moments that you realize how deeply God's presence sustains you. The peace He gives helps you to maintain a perspective that is rooted in faith, not in fear. It enables you to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead seems unclear, knowing that God is guiding you every step of the way. This peace also serves as a reminder that God is preparing your heart to receive the blessings He has for you. It is not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of God's reassurance that you are in His hands. When the world around you is uncertain, you can rest in the certainty of God's promises. His peace helps you to maintain a sense of calm and trust, knowing that He is working all things together for your good. Romans 8:28. As God prepares to bless you with something big, His peace will settle over your heart, confirming that He is with you and that He has everything under control. This peace transforms the way you view your circumstances. Instead of being consumed by worry or fear, you begin to see things through the lens of God's sovereignty. You realize that your future is secure in His hands, and no matter what external challenges arise, you can face them with a quiet confidence. The peace of God teaches you to trust Him more deeply, even when the situation seems difficult or confusing. It enables you to be still and know that He is God, that He is with you, and that He will lead you to the blessings He has promised. When God is about to give you something big, you may also notice that He begins to move you out of your comfort zone. This is often one of the most challenging aspects of His preparation process, as stepping into the unknown requires faith, courage, and a willingness to leave behind what feels familiar and secure. While comfort can be a source of temporary peace, it can also limit growth and prevent us from experiencing the fullness of what God has planned for us. God, in His wisdom, knows that in order to prepare us for greater blessings, we must be willing to step out in faith and trust Him in the unfamiliar and uncomfortable spaces. Comfort zones are places where we feel safe and in control, where we know what to expect and how to navigate our daily lives. But God doesn't always work in these predictable spaces. He calls us into places that stretch our faith, challenge our thinking, and require us to depend more fully on Him. When God is about to bless us with something big, He often calls us to take bold steps, leave behind old patterns, and embrace a new way of living. This is not just a physical shift, but also a spiritual one, moving from self-reliance to complete reliance on God. He may ask us to step into new roles, take on new responsibilities, or make difficult decisions that push us beyond our natural abilities. The Bible provides numerous examples of people who were called out of their comfort zones in order to experience God's blessings. Abraham, for example, was called by God to leave his home, his family, and everything familiar to journey to a land that God would show him. In Genesis 12:01, God tells Abraham, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Abraham had no map, no clear destination, and no guarantee of what lay ahead. Yet he stepped out in obedience, trusting God's promise to make him the father of many nations. This act of faith and obedience was the first step toward receiving the great blessing God had in store for him. If Abraham had stayed in his comfort zone, he would have never experienced the fullness of God's plan for his life. When the Israelites were led out of Egypt, They were called to leave the security of their former life in slavery for a promised land that was not yet fully theirs. The journey from Egypt to the promised land was fraught with uncertainty, trials, and challenges. God's purpose was clear. He was preparing them for something far greater than they could imagine. But they had to leave the familiar in order to experience it. In Exodus 14:15, God tells Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." At that moment, God was instructing them to take action, to trust Him, and to step forward into the unknown. Moving out of their comfort zone was the key to receiving the blessings He had promised them. Stepping out of your comfort zone is not without its difficulties. It often involves facing fears, doubts, and insecurities. The fear of the unknown can be paralyzing, and we may struggle with feelings of inadequacy or uncertainty about the future. But God uses these moments to build our faith and trust in Him. As we step into unfamiliar territory, we learn to rely on God's strength, not our own. In Isaiah 41:10, God reassures us, saying, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." These words remind us that even when we feel weak or uncertain, God is with us every step of the way. He promises to give us the strength and courage we need to face the challenges ahead. When God moves us out of our comfort zones, He is preparing us for something bigger than we can comprehend. He stretches our faith, deepens our dependence on Him, and equips us for the responsibilities that come with His blessings. The discomfort we experience in these moments is not meant to harm us, but to refine us, so that we can handle the bigger things He has planned for us with wisdom, grace, and a heart that seeks to honor Him. As we step into the unknown, we must remember that God is always with us, guiding us and preparing us to receive the great blessings He has in store. When God is about to give us something big, He prepares us in ways that we may not always understand in the moment, but that are vital to receiving His blessings. Through a series of challenges, detours, moments of growth, and times of discomfort, God molds our hearts, strengthens our faith, and sharpens our discernment, ensuring that we are ready to embrace what He has in store. He moves us out of our comfort zones, not to harm us, but to help us grow, teaching us to rely on Him and trust in His perfect timing. As we face these preparations with a heart of obedience and a spirit of trust, we can be assured that His plans are always good, and He will equip us with everything we need to fulfill His purposes. With each step, He draws us closer to the greatness He has designed for us, and when the time is right, He will bless us beyond what we can imagine. In the end, it is not the blessings themselves that matter most, but the process of becoming more like Christ and learning to steward His gifts with faithfulness and humility.